In the world of AI, I have promptly made him into an AI avatar. So it's basically as if we're talking to Friedrich Nietzsche. God is dead, God remains dead, and we have killed him. The danger wasn't in atheism, but nihilism, meaning that there was no higher purpose, no trustworthy values, and no answer to the why. He says, imagine that you had to live this exact life again and again. Every joy, every humiliation, every loss, every triumph, every wasted hour. Could you will it? I lived, textually speaking, for the philosopher's task. What does nihilism mean? That the highest values devalue themselves. The aim is lacking. Why? Finds no answer. A quote, how much truth does a spirit endure? How much truth does it dare? More and more that became for me the real measure of value. Welcome to today's episode. We have on Friedrich Nietzsche, who, if you don't know, he's a famous philosopher, writer, but he's from the 1800s. We don't have him here today. But in the world of AI, I have promptly made him into an AI avatar. So it's basically as if we're talking to Friedrich Nietzsche. We have him in the room, but I'm still trying to maintain some academic integrity. And so if it can't speak to something, if the sources are a little blurry in some areas of his life, then it's designed not to answer. But for all intents and purposes, it's as if we can ask him ourselves. And so I'll be interviewing, helping us learn about his story, who he was, his life, what he did in his life, and why is he so famous? What did he write about? What was his perspective on life? What did he think about? What were his beliefs? And most importantly, how all of that is applicable to our lives today. This is all based on the theory of perspectives. You and me, we all have a perspective of life, a way in which we view the world, that lens that you put on. That perspective influences how we see ourselves and other people and the world. And it's a perspective that either enables us to accomplish great things because it becomes the life that we live, but it also can act as a little barrier to our progress. And so, as we look to make forward progress, great change in our life, I think the way we go about doing it is incorporating different perspectives, different from our own. So the question is, what can Friedrich Nietzsche add? What can his perspective add to us in our lives based on everything that he was knowledgeable about? And so let's dive in. This is him. You'll be looking at me, but also the computer, because this is where Friedrich lives. That's the AI avatar. And so let's dive in. I'm just going to have a quick introduction. Hey, Friedrich. My name is Dan, and welcome. Today you're on a podcast. And so we want to learn all about you. Personally, I don't know much about you. I've never read any of your works, but I hear about you in podcasts I listen to, different conversations, and overall you seem to be a pretty famous guy. And so I've got two questions to start us off. First off, what makes you famous? What are you known for? And why should we listen to you? And then second off, tell me a little bit about your childhood. What was the world like and when you grew up? What was your family like? The external circumstance, and then maybe some of the factors that influenced you. It's kind of cool because podcasts are a huge thing, and we always want to listen to the people that are well known. But there's only a very fractional percentage of people who have ever lived that are alive. And how many famous people are there that are dead that no one gets to interview? I guess I pronounced his name wrong. He says, Dan, first call me Friedrich, not Frederick. I don't speak German. But he continues, I'm famous because I put a hammer to the idols of Europe. God, morality, truth, pity, democracy, nationalism, metaphysics, and the flattering little lies by which modern people protect themselves from the abyss. A few of the phrases attached to my name became famous because they named spiritual events before most people admitted they were happening. From the Gay Science, Friedrich says, God is dead, God remains dead, and we have killed him. I have heard that quote before, but honestly never looked into it. By this, I did not mean a clever atheist slogan. I meant the old Christian metaphysical order had lost its authority, yet Europeans still lived off its moral afterglow. The danger wasn't in atheism, but nihilism, meaning that there was no higher purpose, no trustworthy values, and no answer to the why. I think these are some of his books, and he says, why listen to me? Not because I will comfort you. Listen rather because I ask some of these harder questions. He has a quote from his book Beyond Good and Evil. There are no moral phenomena at all, but only a moral interpretation of phenomena. As for childhood, I was born October 15th, 1844, in Rocken, a small village in Prussian Saxony. My father, Karl Ludwig Nietzsche, was a Lutheran pastor, and my mother was Franziska Nietzsche. The household was deeply Protestant, musical, disciplined, and provincial. My father died in 1849 when I was still a small child. My younger brother Joseph died the next year. After that, I grew up in a large female household with my mother, sister, grandmother, and aunts. Eventually in Naumburg, the Germany people know from the 20th century, it was a patchwork of German states under rising Prussian power, marked by Lutheran culture, classical education, political upheaval after 1848, and later the drive toward German unification. I grew up inside a world of churches, grammar, Greek, Latin, hymns, military discipline. My early formation was classical. At Forta, an elite boarding school, I received the severe training of a philologist. Greek tragedy, Latin prose, textual discipline, old languages, old gods. This mattered enormously. Before I was a philosopher, I was a reader of antiquity. The Greeks taught me that culture could be tragic, artistic, hierarchical, agnostic, far deeper than modern moral optimism. So my strongest early influences were Christianity, Greek antiquity, music, a specific composer, which I don't know, and Richard Wagner, whom I adored, and later rejected. Okay, thanks for sharing. Could you tell me a little bit about some of the major things you wrote about? Major claims you had, beliefs, and why? He says the main question he asked was what happens when the old god dies, but his morality keeps ruling like a ghost. Then he gives us a list of the major things he talked about. 10 things. He talked about the death of God and the problem of nihilism, which was his most famous claim. The deeper claim behind that quote that God is dead and we've killed him is that European civilization had lost its higher source of meaning, but hadn't yet understood the consequences. I assume this is referring to the Great Enlightenment when people became more scientific. There was a big rejection of traditional religion. And so I assume that that is what he's talking about. He says the danger is this: once Christianity, metaphysics, and the true world lost authority, people may no longer know why they should live, suffer, create, obey, or strive. This is nihilism, which is the collapse of the highest values. The second thing is the genealogy of morality. He thought about where belief came from. He has a quote that says, "We need a critic of moral values. The value of these values themselves must first be called into question." His claim was that morality has a history. It didn't just drop out of heaven, which kind of makes sense. So the many values that were praised as good, like humility, self-denial, meekness, may not have arisen from the strong, but from the revenge of the weak against the strong. This is where my idea of resentment matters. Interesting. So he talks about those two things. His third is about master morality and slave morality. In this, it says, I argued that there are different origins of moral valuation. In master morality, good originally meant noble, powerful, beautiful, proud, life-affirming. Bad meant common, low, and vulgar. And then alongside that, there was slave morality that was born out of resentment. It was the weak reverse of noble values, where the strong became evil and the suffering, obedient, humble person becomes good. This is one of my central claims in Beyond Good and Evil and on the genealogy of morality. I didn't mean that cruelty is automatically noble or that domination is automatically admirable. I meant that the moral systems often conceal psychological and historical struggles. He talks about perspectivism and suspicion towards pure truth. So he talks about a lot, but I want to dive into this first one. Could you tell me a little bit more about how your thinking originated? For number one, for example, I think you're referring to the rise of the Great Enlightenment and the rejection with science. Could you tell me a little bit about how your thoughts evolved and why you rejected what you were handed as a kid? He says I'm partly right. The Enlightenment, modern science, historical criticism, and the weakening of church authority are all part of the background. But my death of God wasn't that simple. He says science defeated religion. He says that Christianity itself had trained Europe in truthfulness, and that truthfulness eventually turned against Christianity. I came from a Lutheran pastor's household. My father was a pastor. My early world was Protestant. Before I became a philosopher, I was trained as a classical philologist, which honestly, I don't know what that means. But he says that means texts, languages, sources, historical development, Greek and Latin culture. So he looked at the context behind things. He says that philology is deadly to naive belief. It teaches you that doctrines have histories, texts have layers, morals have genealogies, gods have birthplaces, and eternal truths often smell of the century that produced them. So one root of my thought was this. I learned to ask how things became what they are, not what is morality in the abstract. He has a quote from On the Genealogy of Morality. We need a critic of moral values. The value of these values themselves must first be called into question. He did note that earlier. I want you to give me a 30,000-foot view. Before we dive into anything, I want to understand a process of your life. What were you handed? What was that worldview? And then how did you take that and how did it change from your adolescence to your adult years into your adulthood? And then lastly, I'm interested, you said that you wrote the majority of your books in just a short amount of time, and then you got sick. But if I'm not wrong, I believe you were still alive for another decade before you actually died. So what happened in that decade? I honestly did not know that Nietzsche was an atheist. So let's get the 30,000-foot view. It says Nietzsche was handed Christianity, which involves the Prussian Protestant morality and the classical education and the German seriousness, which I assume was part of its culture at the time. He transformed them first into romantic art philosophy, then into skepticism, which means that he got skeptical about that. Then into a radical critique of morality, truth, religion, and modern culture. Then in 1889, his thinking life ended abruptly, but his body lived until 1900. So his worldview that he was handed as a kid was that European in the 1800s. Very traditional, very Christian. And that worldview would have given him, as it says here, God gives order to the world. Christian morality teaches basically how to live. Truth is sacred. The soul is more important than the body. Earthly suffering has religious meaning, and a good person submits to God. In adolescence, he became a classicist, which refers to Greek, Latin, and ancient literature. He became a professor of classical philology at Basel, which I assume is a university, at age 24, so he was really young. And this is where my thought changes sharply. He says that he began to distrust Wagner, he distrusted metaphysics, and distrust the grand redemptive arc of Christianity, and he began to admire clarity, psychology, history, skepticism, and science. This is the period of Human All Too Human, Daybreak, and the Gay Science, which were all the books that he wrote. By the 1880s, he's no longer rejecting his childhood religion, but he's looking at the bigger picture. He's looking at the civilization, especially Europe as a whole. When an old authority becomes basically outdated, it loses its authority. And so he asks the question, he says, if the old God is gone, who creates the values now? And after he kind of made that stand, he wrote all these books from 1872 to 1888. And in January 1889, in Turin, Nietzsche suffered a mental collapse. The famous story says he saw a horse being beaten, embraced it, and collapsed. But the record isn't firm enough to treat the horse scene as certain. What is secure is that he did collapse in Turin. He sent bizarre letters soon afterward, and his friend Franz Overbeck came to bring him back to Basel. After that, the philosopher was essentially gone. He spent time first in the Basel clinic, then in a clinic in Jena, then under his mother's care in Naumburg. But his mother died in 1897, and so his sister Elisabeth cared for him in Weimar. After that, he lived until August 25th of the 1900. And he produced no serious philosophical work after the collapse. The Britannica summarizes this last period as 11 years of profound mental incapacity. The cause of the collapse remains disputed. Older accounts often diagnose tertiary syphilis. Later scholars and physicians have proposed other possibilities, including vascular dementia, a brain tumor, or other neurological disorders. And the record doesn't allow a confident diagnosis. He says this last decade also matters for my legacy because my sister, Elisabeth, increasingly took control over my papers and my public image. She helped shape an archive and a reception that often distorted my thought, especially in nationalist and anti-Semitic directions. So I can get the worldview, and I think that has a lot of similarities into what's going on in our world today, at least personally. Everyone's handed a unique culture and a unique worldview, but we're post-Enlightenment. If you look at things from a 30,000-foot view, that was 1800. We went into the science age. And since 1900, science has basically taken over. Religion has consistently gone down, and people have become more logic-oriented, more reason-oriented, and the faith has taken basically the sidelines. And that's what I've been exposed to. I think wokeism is a perfect example of what spawned after that, and why I bring that up is because it seems that science has established itself, of course, but people are still looking for the next thing, because science obviously doesn't explain why we're here. It can explain a lot of how and a lot of what about this world, about us, about Earth, but it can't answer the question of why. And Statistically, there's a lot of revival within spirituality, even if it's not religion. But this is someone who was at the forefront, which I think is interesting. Even in the late 1800s, he saw the storm before it really happened. And with his generation, it sounds like people were becoming more scientific and less religious, but that culture still had a profound effect on him, which would make sense why he would get riled up about that. What I'm interested in is, what resolution did he offer? If this was someone who was at the beginning, who saw both sides, that is the world before science took over and the world after science took over, I want to understand what resolution he came up with. Because he asks this question, I'll pull it up. If the old God is gone, who creates values now? So I'll respond to him. This is interesting because I'm living in the 2020s and I seem to be at the point after the major effects of the scientific revolution have played out. And you were at a point in the late 1800s where you saw both sides, first of the established Christian world and that worldview and metaphysics. And then you saw it break apart when people began to be distrusting of that and hold to science. And you were mad because the culture still held strong. And so you talk about God is dead, he remains dead, and we have killed him. I want to understand, what resolution did you offer? Because I've come to face that too. And you talk about how this nihilism creeps in, where if you don't have a purpose and you don't have a why, then there's nothing. And so, yeah, that was my question. What resolution, if God is dead, what creates the values? And what did you live for? What do you think societally was the answer based on that point in the time that you saw? Because I think it's something that in my time people are still dealing with. Because we've established science as the end-all say-all, but it still doesn't answer the questions of why. It can teach us the what and the how of our lives and our bodies and the world around us, but it still doesn't answer the question of why. I'll read it. He says, he names the wound. Basically, what I'm trying to get at is that science dissolved the old explanations of the world that we had, because we learned about evolution, we learned about a bigger universe than we anticipated, and that it didn't revolve around the Earth, but actually the Earth was just another planet that revolved around the sun. And so science, it dissolved old explanations of the world, but it didn't necessarily supply us with a new one. He says, Dan, yes, you have grasped the central problem. There's a quote from one of his books saying, quote, verily men gave themselves all their good and evil. Verily they did not take it, they did not find it, nor did it come to them as a voice from heaven. So he argues that our values in the first place were created by us. So the resolution was a revaluation of all our values. He didn't mean no values, because that's closer to nihilism. And he did reject the old values, but he wanted to be methodical about what values then he would create. He says we must ask which values strengthen life, deepen the human being, increase courage, beauty, discipline, honesty, creativity, self-command, and the capacity to affirm existence, even in suffering. So, who creates the values? In my thought, values are created by higher types. Though people that are artists, philosophers, creators, the rare human beings strong enough. He has a quote, I teach you the overman. Man is something that shall be overcome. And again, what is great in man is that he is a bridge and not an end. Man is something that shall be overcome. The answer is, become the kind of being who can give meaning. But how do you know whether your values are worthy? He made a test called eternal recurrence. He says, imagine that you had to live this exact life again and again. Every joy, every humiliation, every loss, every triumph, every wasted hour. Could you will it? And then he inserts his quote from The Gay Science. The question in each and every thing, do you desire this once more and innumerable times more, would lie upon your actions as the greatest weight. Do not merely ask, is this allowed, or will people approve this action, but ask, can I will this eternally, meaning, does this action belong to a life that I could affirm, a life that I could say yes to? And then it comes to, what did he live for? The record allows a careful answer here. I shouldn't invent private emotion, but in the writings, Nietzsche repeatedly presents his tasks as overcoming of nihilism, the critique of morality, and the preparation of a new kind of human being. In one of his books, he says, I am no man, I am dynamite. I live, textually speaking, for the philosopher's task, to expose false values, diagnose decadence, and call forth a stronger human possibility. Another quote, I want to learn more and more to see as beautiful what is necessary in things. Then I shall be one of those who makes things beautiful. Amor fati, which means love of fate. Let that be my love henceforth. And then he considers what was the societal answer. He says he didn't offer a modern democratic program of let everyone choose their own meaning and be nice. I thought that kind of answer often produces the last man, comfortable, safe, entertained, mediocre, and unwilling to suffer for anything higher. The societal answer for me was culture, that a society should be judged by whether it makes possible higher human beings, deeper art, stronger spirits, greater creators. A culture's question should be, what type of human being are we producing? That question still cuts into your 2020s. A society can have science, technology, medicine, entertainment, information, and still lack a commanding why. So what is the answer for you? The Nietzschean answer is to create value, test them against suffering, ask whether they come from strength or resentment, make your life something you could do over again, become more than a consumer, and become worthy of creation. Talk to me about nihilism. From what I hear so far, it seems like something you've entertained, something you definitely came in contact with. And I could say the same of myself, but obviously it leaves you a little bit empty-handed. And so I'm wondering, what do you think about it? And did you ever fall into it? Are you nihilistic, or did you find meaning? And if so, how? He has a quote, apparently, in the notebooks, where he gives a famous formulation. And it's a quote. It says, what does nihilism mean? That the highest values devalue themselves. The aim is lacking. Why? Finds no answer. The highest values devalue themselves. And the question why has no answer. Christian Europe had a powerful answer to suffering. It included God, sin, salvation, heaven, judgment, and redemption. He knew where you came from, what you were, why, and where you were going. But then he says this may sound strange, but I saw Christianity not only as an antidote to nihilism, but also as one of its deepest sources. Because Christianity teaches people to judge this world in the name of another world. It says this life is fallen, the body is suspect, pride is sin, earthly greatness is dangerous. True justice is elsewhere. So Christianity gives meaning, yes, but often by devaluing the earth. In Twilight of the Idols, I attack the true world idea, the belief that this world is merely apparent, while a higher world is truly real. He has a quote, the true world we have abolished. What world has remained? The apparent one, perhaps, but no. With the true world, we have also abolished the apparent one. That's deep. So this is a new, interesting, skeptical angle on Christianity, saying that Christianity teaches people to judge this world in the name of another world. So we live our life. That's really interesting. We live our life based on the judgment. We analyze everything with the view of a different world that we don't even know of. And so he took that and said, well, if you get rid of Christianity, then you're not only getting rid of this world of fiction, quote unquote, of what you created being the afterlife and the before life, but you're also getting rid of this world. He uses the word the apparent world, the apparent being the world that you live in based on the world that's used to analyze this world. And then he says this, did I fall into nihilism? Here I must answer carefully. The record doesn't allow a confident answer. But textually, yes. Nietzsche clearly entered the problem of nihilism, lived intellectually inside it, and treated it as the central spiritual crisis of Europe. He wasn't a naive optimist. He looked into it. But was he a nihilist in the final sense? No. He was better understood as a diagnostician and an opponent of nihilism. And so it seems that he found a purpose in his nihilism. Given if nothing matters, or that everything that I know is wrong, you can have passive nihilism that says, well, if it doesn't matter, let's do what I want. Let's become comfortable, distracted, basically hedonistic. He has a quote, we have invented happiness, say the last men, and they blink. Active nihilism, on the other hand, says that if these old values are indeed dead, let us destroy what is already hollow, basically in the pursuit of something better. One of my most important lines comes at the end on the genealogy of morality, where he says, man would rather will nothingness than not will. It's terrifying, it says. Human beings need a why so badly that they may cling even to self-hatred, guilt, fanaticism, or death worship, rather than face meaninglessness. And lastly, the question, did he find meaning? The meaning I found, or better, the meanings Nietzsche's writings point toward, is created meaning, tested by life. 3 formulas matter. First, self-overcoming. I teach you the overman. Man is something that shall be overcome. Second, amor fati, love of fate. My formula for greatness in a human being is amor fati. That one wants nothing to be different. Not forward, not backward, not in all eternity. And third, eternal recurrence. The question in each and everything, do you desire this once more and innumerable times more, would lie upon your actions as the greatest weight. So, am I nihilistic? No, not in the usual sense. Here's my response. So, it seems that you figured out a lot, or I guess came to go through a lot in your life of rejecting an old worldview and trying to figure out a new one, not only for yourself, but for the world. I'm curious, based on what you went through and all that you thought about, the life you spent thinking, what are the major, let's just do one. What is one main thing that you would hope to instill in the people that live today that would help them live a life that is all of those 3 things you talk about, and maybe avoid the pitfalls of believing in a lie? So it's interesting. It seems that obviously if you reject your value, you get faced with nihilism. If anyone rejects their worldview, that's what is next to meet them. And obviously no one wants to stay there. And he says you can either set up camp there and build your own idols, or what he tried to do is create his own meaning, but not out of nothingness, but out of something that life itself inherently ratified. But it's interesting because you become God at that point, or life becomes God. because you're still judging value and creating value either out of yourself or out of life. But then you'd argue who has the final call, who has the authority to give you the meaning. And if it's you and of yourself, it's you, but at the same time, it's all the influences that are on you. Or maybe it is you. I'm not really sure. So interesting. I'm going to have to ask him. But he did answer this last question of the one thing he'd instill in you and me. He says, have the courage to become who you are without needing a lie to protect you from life. A quote, how much truth does a spirit endure? How much truth does it dare? More and more that became for me the real measure of value. How much truth does a spirit endure? How much truth does it dare? More and more that became for me the real measure of value. Truthfulness strong enough to become creative. I do not understand that quote. How much truth does a spirit endure? How much truth does it dare? That's two questions. First answer, more and more that became for me the real measure of value. The first danger is the old lie, believing something merely because it comforts you. Second danger is modern emptiness, seeing through the old lies and then becoming small. So the task is not just to debunk. Any clever adolescent can debunk. The task is to pass through the disillusionment and still become capable. So don't ask, what do I believe? Ask, what kind of person is being produced by my beliefs. So he didn't try necessarily to create the beliefs, but he just oriented it around a purpose of good, maybe goodness, looking more at the target than the tools. He has a quote, what does your conscience say? You shall become who you are. We, however, want to become those we are. Human beings who are new, unique, incomparable, who give themselves laws, who create themselves. Thanks for sharing. Now, Friedrich, I am going to push back on you a little bit because I relate to you in the sense of debunking the worldview I was handed and confronting nihilism. And obviously, I don't want to stay there just as much as you did and set up camp to a hedonistic life. And so I want to offer you the resolution that I've come up with. And I want you to share your thoughts on it. At least aid me with the texts of your books into maybe some perspectives I haven't thought of. But this is it. The one resolution I've come up with is truth. That truth is the highest good, and it has to do with an idea that we act based on what we believe. And so any amount of misconception of untruth hurts us. And Jesus teaches about this. He says that the truth will set us free. And when he is questioned by Pilate, he says, to this end was I born, and for this cause came I into the world, to bear witness of truth, and that anyone who is of truth will hear his voice. And even beyond Christianity and Jesus himself, I think that the merit holds in the weight of truth being the highest good, or the highest virtue, just the highest. And so what I've found as my resolution is seeking truth, that my life is basically a game of figuring out what's true, what's not, and how do I orient a life around that? How do I see myself? How do I see other people? What do I do every day that is truthful? And I made a game of figuring out what's misconception and then what is good, and then how do I change to become more aligned with truth? That's my game. And the interesting thing about that is that if truth is the highest, then that goes beyond righteousness. It doesn't matter how righteous I am. It doesn't even matter what I do. but it's truth. So those are my thoughts. I wanted to get your perspective on. And this is also for anyone out there, because your worldview is everything. We all have some end that influences our decision making. And this can be a self-reflection for you to practice. All you have to do is ask why. It's actually really fun. To everything you do, everything around you. Look at your house, look at your body, look at the time you wake up, look at how you spend your time, look at your relationships, and ask why. Why? Why did you get up today? Well, I have to go to work. Why do you work? Because I have money. Why do you need money? Well, because I need to eat. Why do you eat? Because I need to live. Why do you live? And if you go back far enough, you always get to some center point of why, where it actually makes you think, well, why am I doing this? What am I motivated by? Am I motivated just for the next weekend where I can see my friends and have some fun, and I live literally because of that? Or do I live in this for the sake of progress, that there's a future that I want and I feel like I'm living now to get to that future? Why? The reason that this conversation is important is because it influences our why. Do you believe that there's a God and you have a divine mission or a divine purpose? Do you not believe that there's a God and you're just here to mess around? Do you believe in morals? Do you believe in good and evil? I think whatever your answer is to the question of why reflects on your beliefs. And Nietzsche's cool, I'm figuring out, because he dove into that. He spent his life basically wrestling with that why. And I've been doing the same, and I'm a skeptical person for sure. I'm cynical, lean on a little bit of the pessimistic side, trying not to, but still do. And I was handed a worldview, and out of high school, I quickly rejected that. But I haven't rejected it entirely because I'm trying to not lose faith, because I saw the opposite of that being nihilistic and nothing and empty. And out of hope for hope, basically, I still have some faith. And the faith has led me to the belief in truth. And anyway, some things for you to think about. Obviously, I'm thinking about them. Let's hear what Nietzsche has to say. If he roasts me. It's hard to even explain, but I think I bring up truth because it's like the barest minimum, the lowest foundation of just like why anything, truth. Because truth is the why. If there is a why, the truth, like figuring out the truth of it would tell you. And so the truth is to basically figure out the why. I don't know if that makes sense. It's a little redundant, but I'm basically saying that I don't know what the why is, but I believe that there's a why, and the truth would tell me that why, because anything else is just a misconception. And so let's learn what is the truth. Not necessarily that I'll ever get to that point, but the truth affects everything because our life is based on perception. And so if I have that pursuit and truth as the highest good, then I may not get to the core of it, but along the way, I'll be able to knock down some doors and at least live a good life. Have the pursuit of one. So that is my reasoning, if that made any sense at all. If not, or if you want to roast it, comment down below and I'm open to hearing you out. But in the meantime, I have Nietzsche on the line, ready to take me under. He says this: your resolution is noble, but he would also put a knife into it. He would ask, why truth? Why should truth be the highest good? What is the value of truth in itself? Nietzsche would say your love of truth may still be Christian. You quote Jesus, the truth will set you free, and to bear witness unto the truth. Nietzsche's suspicion would be this: even when modern people leave Christianity, they often preserve Christianity's deepest moral habit, the belief that truth is sacred. In The Gay Science, Nietzsche says that even modern godless truth seekers still inherit an old religious faith. That passage speaks directly to you. Nietzsche isn't saying truth is worthless. He's asking whether your devotion to truth is secretly still theological. So yes, truthfulness is a test of strength, but Nietzsche would resist your claim that truth is simply the highest good. Why? Because for him, life is deeper than truth. Truth is not automatically life-enhancing. Some truths can crush, weaken, sicken, or paralyze. Some illusions, interpretations. I don't even want to read it because I'm going to lose my train of thought. I'm just going to say, I don't think you're understanding me. I still am Christian. I haven't gone godless in the pursuit of truth. I'm just saying that the truth is the highest. And so, who is God? What is Christianity? I don't even know. I think, is Jesus part of it? I think so, but I don't know the truth. So right now I'm just on the pursuit of truth, and I found the most helpful mentor in that pursuit to be Jesus. And so your words about, what did it say? Because for him life is deeper than truth, truth is not automatically life enhancing. I think it is. The truth, that's exactly why, because if truth is higher than happiness or righteousness, then it will crush you. It will weaken you. It will make you sad. But in the end, the facts are friendly. And so, like, if you're living in happiness in deception, then you're living a lie. And so your happiness is a lie. And so I think truth is the highest because it makes sense. Like, if truth is the highest, then whatever you're living, if you're aligned with truth, at least it's real. Because if any alternative exists, then it's just fake and it doesn't exist. It's a figment of whatever you've created. And so that is my argument. Anyway, back to Nietzsche. Danius, now I understand you. Nietzsche's knife goes somewhere else. It goes here. Why assume truth is friendly? Where Nietzsche would press you is not on whether lies are better. He would agree that a happiness built on deception is spiritually suspect. His deeper challenge is this. You say the facts are friendly, but how do you know? Well, I don't know. That's the faith part. I just believe that they are. Because if the facts aren't friendly, then I'd be back at nihilism. And so I hope for hope's sake. Nietzsche is not saying falsehood is better than truth. Nietzsche would ask you to examine your will to truth. He would ask what is happening in the soul that wants truth above everything. I think a good thing would happen in the soul. The will to truth requires... No way he has a quote on this. That's absurd, bro. Is this real? Or did AI make this up? I'm fact checking. It's real. That's crazy. Says, quote, the will to truth which will still tempt us to many a venture, that famous truthfulness of which all philosophers so far have spoken with respect. What questions has this will to truth not laid before us? The will to truth requires a critique. Let us thus define our own task. The value of truth must, for once, be experimentally called into question. This is the fork in the road between us. So honestly, I didn't grasp everything you're trying to say, but I feel like the basis of my argument is that truth is the highest, and I believe the truth is the best thing to go for because you figure out what's real. And I think the facts are friendly because the alternative is nihilism. And I hope for hope's sake, because I believe that I just have faith that there is good. And so, yeah, I don't really have anything to argue you with. So what I'm just curious is, like, what is Nietzsche's final highest thing? What is your central claim at the end of your life? Like, what was your answer? Did you even have one? And I'm so curious if you just, like, spent 10 years, like, without an answer. Or did you have one? Do you have a resolution that you stand by? Or did you not figure one out? Nietzsche's final answer was not truth as the highest good. His final answer was closer to this: say yes to life without needing another world, a final guarantee, or a comforting lie. Fair enough. And become strong enough to create values from that yes. That is the center. Say yes to life and create values from that. And then he has those three things: life affirmation, amor fati, and the other thing. The higher human task is to revalue values. The highest type of person is the person who creates values and affirms life without metaphysical guarantees. Become the kind of being who can give meaning and would say yes to that meaning. I think that's what he's meaning, because he has the creation of value, but then the way that you judge the creation of value is by saying yes to it. If it's something you'd sign up for, something you'd live, so then you're just your own master at that point. So basically, you are your own god. The final highest thing, Dionysian affirmation. Near the end, Nietzsche frames his deepest opposition as Dionysus versus the crucified. Have I been understood? That line is crucial. For Nietzsche, the crucified represents his polemical interpretation or religious interpretation of suffering that redeems life by pointing beyond life. Sin, guilt, another world. Dionysus represents the opposite, saying yes to life, even in its terror, excess, pain, contradiction, and destruction. Rather, the life that's worthy, the life that is worth affirming, even without another world judging it, or just actually even being there. I see. So, have I been understood? Dionysus versus the crucified. He is the Dionysus. What is a life worth living? If there is no afterlife, if there is no other world, it's judged in and of itself. And judged by saying yes. Yes being, yes, this is the life I would live. Interesting take. Nietzsche says truth is noble. This is back to mine, and we're just having a debate at this point. Truth is noble, but truth is not highest. The highest question is what kind of life can bear truth and still affirm existence. So he's saying yes to existence is the highest, and truth would basically be a part of that, but whatever, but it has to affirm existence. And yeah, I just think you have to get rid of the second half entirely. I think truth is the highest, because if it's not truth, but it affirms existence, then your affirmed existence is just a lie, and it's literally nothing but just a construct of your own mind. So that is my argument. Did he spend the last 10 years without an answer? No, not exactly. Nietzsche collapsed in January 1889 and lived until August 1900. The record doesn't allow a confident answer about his inner life during those years. These were years of severe mental incapacity. Cared for first pins and family. Dang. It's tough that we don't know what happened to him. Well, thank you, Nietzsche. Obviously, I can't judge the man because you can't judge what you don't understand. But we also have to make judgments for how we're going to live our life. And I really I think there's a lot of merit into skepticism and cynicism. I think we should be cynical about everything that we believe in and that we don't believe in. Yeah, just everything. But I also don't necessarily agree with what he came to beyond nihilism. I don't think a life-affirming life in and of itself is the highest good, because it's judged by you. I could live a life hedonistic, I could say, what life do I want to live? I'll live a life that's rich and self-absorbed and for my own self-interest. And I would say yes to that life and live it over again. I don't think that is how you can judge. I don't think it's a good way to judge, because you're judging your life based on the only fact that I live it again. Maybe that's an incorrect assumption. But, ladies and gentlemen, that is Nietzsche. It's sad to me that he got mentally incapacitated the last decade of his life. I feel like that's such an ironic end for a philosopher. Kind of tough. I want to hear from you. I've created Friedrich Nietzsche as an AI avatar, as if we have him in the flesh. I want you to comment down below a couple questions you would ask Friedrich Nietzsche. And I'll come back on here, do a Q&A with the comments down below. And of course, if you have any suggestions, feedback for me, I'm still figuring out. I've done the last few episodes all in a different way, but I'd really love to incorporate the AI avatar. But I'm trying to figure out the best workflow to create a repeated podcast. So comment down below the feedback you have for me. And all I ask of you is to subscribe, share this with a friend if you thought it was interesting. And I'll work at it getting better. And if you subscribe, that will give me the freedom to work at it better, because it will allow me to work on this rather than a random job that I don't want to work at. So thank you very much. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.